Yo, it's Dr. James Utley, your resident code breaker data scraper. And right now, I'm pulling out the secret sauce here. So through like countless hours, well, I guess you could probably count them, but many thousands of hours of use with the use of AI, which is like starting with like GPT the third, GPT-3, so three, and every model after that. I've messed with every model that is possible, and there was a period of time where I was really focusing on prompt engineering and like kind of understanding the difference of how you could manipulate the model. And that was part of my success in the Gandalf "You shall not pass" Gandalf challenge, which I think I'm number 7 still globally. So I must have learned something. Anyway, with that is that I'm just trying to be like, I want to educate people on how to, because we all suck at prompting, to be like better prompters, be better prompt engineers, and because it's a valuable skill that went away, and there was this period of like context engineering, which, yeah, is still very important. All of these things are important. You're an orchestrator, but I think now the models are getting more intelligent, or they're getting less optimized for benchmarks. If you can treat them like machines, treat them like a higher abstraction of a computer program, just like you're learning anything, then you just have better outputs. So I preface that. So, like, all we're talking about today is prompting. And I'm going to go through this substack of a framework that I've developed, which I think is very useful. And I've seen variants of things like that, this framework, but like this is the one that I've been using for a while, and I just think that the outputs are better. Whether you're prompting agents for like agentic coding reasons or vibe coding, bringing it the vibes, or if you're wanting to develop documents, research, all of these things, like, because the point is that this is a zero shot prompting technique. Now there's a caveat which I'll come back to around that, but so I don't get these like definition people like coming after me, so I'll come back to it. Don't worry. And so yeah, this is the packet framework. Packet. So you're the packet man with the packet framework. So with that, I wanted to say like one more point, and that point is, you've heard me say you have like zero shot, one shot, few shot, and then you're in doom shot. So what that means is you try to do your best in this zero shot region, which means a zero. The model is not doesn't have what you're looking for or that you're aware of in its training data. So you're giving it instructions very clear that you can get the proper output as what you're looking for. Now, zero shot and one shot, like, I don't know, it's a little confusing to me, but I like to call this, you want to achieve zero shot success, which means that the model don't know you from Adam. You can give it this instructions and get the most efficient output as you want. Right. Okay, so zero shot doesn't know you. One shot, I don't know. It's like, or single shot or whatever they're calling it, means that it's really that there's something that the model can resonate with in its training data, or it has the behavior or recognize the behavior before. But I don't really know, and it's irrelevant. Who gives a shit? Okay, few shot means that you hit it with a shot and you're like, okay, now you want to change something, you want to refine something, put it in my tone, these type of things. So it's like a few shots down the road, you're giving it a few little instruction blip blip blip, and then you get a nice efficient output. And then, especially in coding, like if you're generating, all the planning has to be up front, because what you're trying to do is you're trying to achieve this success by the proper planning, which means that it will generate the Claude Markdown file, the cursor, whatever you use. It will give it the actions. It just gives it the planning. So then the LLM will never lose context. It can always just reach in that bucket and see where it's supposed to go, and it keeps it along. So planning up front, which is all like the zero to one shot type realm anyway. But I know that if you get down the road with a bunch of shots, then you get in doom shot land, which I always say you might as well start over, because what has happened is, like, the thing about these models is they're so intelligent, and they honestly are so intelligent, but every once in a while they just go off the rails, and you're like, I mean, they're just like unpredictable humans, like There, that's what happens. And then it'll start producing bugs. And then okay, so you identify the bug, and then it's like, yeah, you're right. Let me go in and fix that bug. And then it just generates another bug. And then you're like, well, why did you do that? And he goes, yeah, you're right. And then it just generates another bug. And then before you know, you have this like recursive bug development. And then at the very end, then it's like, yeah, you're right. I'll go ahead and fix all those bugs. And then what will happen is it'll just go back and reproduce the first bug that it produced, and it's just like it just keeps this loop, right? So you don't want that. That's when you're in doomshot land, right? The other part is like duplicate code. It'll just like wrap another function on a function on a function, and just duplicate code. It's just bloated and not anywhere close to reasonable. Like it may run, but it's not like reasonable. And then like the last part is that it'll like just develop all of these like, oh, it'll just define and then but the variables won't be defined. So it'll just be undefined variable, function with no variable, function with no variable, and it'll just happen over and over again. And then as your project grows, especially in a code base, as the project grows, it just falls apart. Okay, that's one part, which is like code generation. The other part is like if you're trying to really build something in context with text, right? Then what happens is just kind of like you're going down and it's well, everything's doing well. Then you get this like few shot land, and then for some reason it's like, okay, now I'm talking about baseball. I mean, maybe it's not that dramatic, but it just drifts, right? And you get this conversation that's like drifting, and it drifts so uh, so subtly that you're just like, oh, okay, you're kind of hosed. All right, that's it. Okay, so how, with all that craziness, prompting is still king. Prompting is important. And if you're one of these like weird people like myself, like looking at the anatomy of the prompt, keeping a prompt library, finding the behaviors of your own prompting skills is really cool. And so anyway, I wrote this Substack. So this is the important part. I wrote this Substack. It's called Promptin Ain't Easy. Promptin ain't easy. That's true. Let me get that packet framework. All right, so we're going to talk about this. Substack goes really what the packet framework is, but it's really simple to remember. All right, so we get to the important part right here. So this is how you frame your prompt for that zero one shot success, like killing it out the gate, right? Giving the LLM as much context as you can for the best output. All right, so we're going to talk about the packet. So P stands for persona. So you give a persona. A, action, right? So you tell like this call to action. This is what you want it to do. C, context. So you're going to provide some context, which is important, some background, right? K, which is keywords, which this is one that I haven't really seen too many people do. And this may be as simple as just looking at your prompt at this point and saying, okay, do I have the key words that are part of the domain in which you want to live? Because you have to think about it like, LLMs or these deep learning is all prediction. It's all just trying to predict the next thing. So if you can reduce the amount of noise in between, then you're going to get to the right thing. So for example, if you're like talking about cloud infrastructure, then use the terms Google Cloud, AWS, these type of things, which will then get the LLM in the right arena to continue the correct answers. All right, so, oh yeah, keywords. Okay, now we're at examples. So this is where you want to provide in examples of like the desired output. So that can be examples of like, there's like context-based examples. So examples of like, this is the meat in which I want you to use. So for example, like a README file from a GitHub or some example, or you can try to frame the expected output in the form of an example. So you're like, okay, well, make the UI look like this. Here's an example. Make the tone of this text, scientific or direct, and make it look like this. And then provide the example. Okay, so that's the next part of packet, and then the last one is tone or target. So this is where you can really define the tone. So if you want the tone, so like, for example, if it's writing an email and you want that email to sound like you, then in the examples, you provided some context of the email. Then you want to go and you want to try to frame the expected output. Like frame what success looks like in your mind if the LLM is going to give it to you, because it's just a prediction machine, right? And you're trying to remove like the gambling out of it. which means that you're trying to provide enough deterministic instructions that you have a deterministic output. Like you, in your mind, this is what you think good would look like. Then you're communicating that. So good, then you get good to like evaluate, right? And it may not be exactly what you thought, right? But if you can frame an expected output, so like for example, if you were like, okay, I would like this to be in an informative tone, 2 paragraphs long, no more than 500 characters, no emojis, no M dashes, and I would like the last part of it to be a table that really highlights how the user can navigate the text prior or something like that, right? So that's like what you think. So you're like dreaming in your mind or envisioning in your mind what this email looks like, which is like a greeting, a welcome, some stuff that is like scientific, and then the last part is a table. And then you just have to communicate that. And that's part of the target or the tone, right? So that's all. Packet, persona, action, context, keywords, examples, tone, or target. And that's what I use now. Here's the part where it's like, here's the meta. Here's the meta about it. Is you don't have to go in that order. I would recommend the persona. Start with the persona and the action. Everything else you can kind of move around, or you can just assess the prompt and say, okay, have I checked out the keywords? Is there enough context? Is there an examples? Because some of that stuff will start bleeding together. Now, the tone and the target, and you kind of break it up. Okay, so there is a few other things that are kind of unique to me. That's just how I've kind of learned it. Is I will separate each part of the prompt with like a dash dash dash, right? And so let's see. Let me just show you what I mean. So here I am in Nucleo, which is an agentic tool that I built myself, by the way. So self-promotion. There's no best interest in self-interest. Self-promotion. Okay, here we go. So I'm going to say you are an expert software engineer with a background in infra development. Okay, you got your persona. Then I always do this. I put this little line there. It's just a habit. Like I don't really know. I don't know if it's works or doesn't work, but it helps me like kind of look, just be able to communicate, and it helps me break it up in my mind. So okay, the action is I would like to know about Kubernetes clusters and similar infrastructure, super computing items. But and I suck at spelling. So okay, action. Then I'm going to context, right? So I'm going to provide the context in which it needs, right? And this is where it's like, okay, more context, more context. You're providing that like, okay, I'm gonna add some documentation for Kubernetes, and this is just for context. I also say search the web for this item if needed. You got to make sure that it's like there's tool calling involved. Okay, keywords, right? So you're gonna go with like the really basic keywords and examples and tone. All right. Okay, this is not a beautiful prompt. This is a lazy prompt. So because I'm in Nucleo, I'm going to use this guy here. And then we're going to try to update the, okay, so we got provide paragraph. Okay, we got a prompt that's enhanced. Okay, and it says that, and it does go over some of the items that I need for packet. All right, so then I'm going to send it. So there's so then the LLM is going to hash it out, but remember in your mind, you're like using that packet framework. And because I didn't want, and I lazied this up, so I used a tool to help, which is built into Nucleo, which is a prompt like a prompt enhancer or prompt improver. And then we'll see what what happens with the output. And then I'm going to show you one other tool. And you see, so I said, okay, like give us like 2 paragraphs, which it did. and give us like, everything we need to know about Kubernetes. And okay, so we're gonna hit that up, and then here in Nucleo, we're gonna run it again. I forgot to shut off the enhanced prompt, which is cool because I'm gonna use the original. I'm gonna use the OG, but you'll see that what I did is I hooked up this slash command slash web. So then it went through, and now it's giving me like more context. So here in Nucleo, it's really easy to update the context for your like main prompt by using the slash command. All right, okay, with that, we kind of like diverged here. Let's see, where do we need to go? We need to look at, yeah, you can, this app I built called 10x.prompt.com. You can head in there, and then you can also hit up the packet framework. So it's like act as a Python dev. Action is make me a outline of a explaining tensor. Okay, context is use tensor documentation from the web as context. Keywords is tensor, PyTorch. Let's do weird CUDA, machine learning. All right, so we got it all there. And examples would be use of TensorFlow in production environments. All right, so some examples there, which this is all lazy, super lazy. And then the target is I would like a 2-paragraph essay that is for a fifth grader. Okay, now, so we went through just really basic framework of the packet framework, but now we can go through here and we can say, okay, what do I want to do by using the built-in personas, right? So of course, I want an educational explainer. I'm gonna throw that template in there. I would like is research based. And did I ask for some code generation? No. And then I would like yeah, we did that one. Okay, so cool. So we got two of the personas that are already built in organically from 10xprompt.com, and we use the packet framework to generate a better prompt. Okay, so 10xprompt.com is going to take the information that you have brought and really kind of reinforce that persona, reinforce, really as much as you can, making it like everything that you put in here and making a nice clear prompt, which it did, and it's got really kind of what you need. So now let's just kick it over to another model. Let's go with Gemini here because we love some Gemini. And let's see what happens. Let's see what the output looks like. Okay, yeah. So we're getting tensors in the real world, kind of educational explainer, 2 paragraphs, full and 2 full. Oh, yeah, let's go. Yes, please do it. Okay, and so there you go. It's going to rock it as exactly how you want, and it's going to give you just a better dense output. Okay, well, let's get back to this. All right, so the last point I want to talk about is this one here, the precision of the packet framework. It's from, you're trying to make from a stochastic to a certain event, right? So the packet framework is really more than just a checklist. It's a methodology. It's a meta. It's a meta, man. And it's really meant to collapse the probabilistic space of an LLM, which means kind of like refine it into what you want so it gives you a better output. One, it's more accurate, building trust and all those things. And then secondly is that it frames you in the mind that you're delivering functions to the LLM, right? So it's not a human, it's a machine. Treat it as a machine, man. Treat it as a machine, man. And so when you give it instructions that you're architecting a pathway for data. So it's like building a pathway for data because it's just a prediction machine. It's not a human. Don't forget that it's not a human. It is not a human. And so you have to approach it like you would any program and just learn the syntax to get the best outcome. And so broadly, by doing it and learning the packet framework and using it over and over again, you're going to train yourself of what a good output on a prompt looks like. You'll see the difference. When it's a prompt, you'll see the difference. And I'm not I'm not too good for a prompt. I prompt all the time. And That's just like when you have a quick question where you don't give a shit about the output. But this is stuff where you're trying to really develop to get the best output you can. So you need to, it's like the zero shot success where you're like, draft me an article, a blog post, a reply to an email, you know, these type of things. You should use that as use the packet framework to help you. And I think that's it. So we love the anatomy of a prompt, and that's the packet framework. Let me give it to you one more time. When you're prompting this beautiful piece of art, you need to follow the persona, action, context, keywords, examples, tone, or target. And if you do that, or you do some variant of that every time, then you know what? You may not suck so bad at prompting. Anyways, with that, I'm Dr. James Utley, your Codebreaker data scraper. Hopefully this was informative. Check out my Substack, subscribe to my YouTube, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.